Hey, folks, welcome back.
Yeah.
Christian and Nate here.
Mm.
Episode 7 of Fellow Travelers. This is our review. So, hopefully, you watched the reaction. Or if you didn't, that's cool too. Maybe you just like to see the reviews.
Yeah.
That's why we're here. That's why we got
Hmm.
it.
Yep.
So, off the top, Nate, just overall feeling about this episode 7, the
Oh, it was so
penultimate
sad.
episode, second to last episode. How are you feeling
Yeah.
about it?
It was sad. All of it was sad. Like there was like literally no happy moments. Like I can't think of one happy moment. But not that it has to have a happy moment. I'm not saying that. It's just
Yeah.
I'm sad. But also that's history, right? So like we're not trying to make it's not like that movie Hollywood on or was it a TV series? I think it was a series on Netflix where they were trying to I mean, that would be a great. Have you seen that show, Hollywood on
Mm-mm.
Netflix? It's about um, Hollywood. I think during the golden ages or whatever,
Hmm.
and how things could have turned out if people were literally honest, right? So like basically, I think it was about like Rock Hudson and just a bunch of other people, like some
Interesting.
Filipino American actors who are actors, yeah, who because Darren Criss, you know who Darren Criss is? From Glee. Anyways, um, Darren Criss was in it as like he's Filipino American, and you know how Filipino Americans had to struggle in Hollywood. Basically, if you weren't white and straight,
Right.
and a man, it's really hard. You had to fight a lot, but. Anyways, he made this show about what would have happened if people were just honest with themselves.
Hmm.
And so it didn't mean that the struggle wasn't there, but the struggle ended up um, allowing people to be the truest versions of themselves, and so it ended up being working out. You know what I mean? So maybe if that were the case, the show would. But otherwise, as it stands, it's just a very sad a very sad reflection of American history, human history, really. But this is very much American. So, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kept my attention. I think it progressed the story well.
Hmm.
It didn't seem like it was like filler or anything, right? Like there was
No.
things were happening, it was progressing.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, as you know and as you saw as we watched it, I'm just not a fan of Hawk.
Yeah.
Some people
Yeah.
might be. Some people want to give him a lot more grace.
Do they?
I feel like people are like, it's hard, and I just find him fundamentally not a good person. Now, that doesn't
Mm.
mean that he can't also have struggles,
Hmm.
but I think ultimately, I just don't think he's a good person.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't mean he can't become a good person, but I think what we've seen so far is not a person that I would like.
Hmm.
That like I wouldn't want to be friends with him. Like I'm like
No,
like I
I
don't
agree.
I don't like you, right? Like
Yeah.
we wouldn't be close friends
Yeah.
because that kind of person is just not to me someone I'm trying to be,
Yeah. I don't
you know.
disagree. He's not somebody I would want to be friends with, but he is somebody that I can understand where he's coming from. Just, I'm sad that those are the choices that he made.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
right. Yeah, like it's sad that your son died. Like that's not your fault. Like how
Hmm.
you're handling that is not healthy, but
Hmm.
I get that, but that doesn't
Hmm.
have anything to do with like how you treat Hawk and your family. Now, I mean Tim and your
Tim
family,
and his
right?
family, yeah.
Like
Hmm.
I can't divorce that from the current situation you're in, right? Like,
Yeah.
yes, I get it, sure, but like that doesn't excuse like the years of what's been happening, right?
Yeah, so like he is, the trauma and the whatever that he's felt from like his father and stuff like that. He's now transferring that over to his family, right? Instead of actually dealing with it himself. You know what I mean? And that is what's painful is because, what they say hurt people, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically what he's doing. And it's just really a sad situation. So like, yeah, I agree. I don't like him. I don't care for. I wouldn't be friends with him. Um, it's hard to tell where his kind of loyalties lie. You know, I think he's someone who loves immensely, but I think he doesn't know how to kind of portray that because of how screwed up his childhood was, and because of the way he believes society operates. So I don't know. It's really
Yeah.
tragic.
Yeah, I mean, I believe he loves his children.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know what I think about how he feels about Tim. I I
That's
I,
yeah.
I think he has some care for him.
Hmm.
I think he likes him.
Hmm.
I don't know how I feel about using the word love to describe what he feels for him. I don't know.
I think he loves Tim. To be honest, I do think it's a very he loves Tim with one of those loves that he's just like, man, if everything in the world lined up. But the problem is, the biggest issue is, not everything in the world is going to line up, you know? And so you have to make the best with what you have, and the best actually could turn into something that's even better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but he's not seeing that. And so, like, and I think that's really what makes the person is given the situation that you're in, what are you going to do? And he has chosen to, just neglect his um, wife instead of, I mean, the least he could have done is these, like, and that's the problem that I have is that she gave him an out, I feel, multiple times, and he just didn't take it. He was just that scared. But like she gave him an out when he sent her brother to, the
Hmm.
and I want to know what happened to him. And that's something I have a frustration with because I'm like, this is the seventh episode now. Like, I still don't know what happened to Cohen. I don't know what happened to her
Yeah,
brother.
they kind of
There's,
dropped all that, right?
yeah,
Like it was
exactly.
yeah, kind of loose threads
And I'm
with
sad
that.
about that. But like, I don't
So
know.
do you think so? You think Hawk does love Tim? Do you think Hawk is loving towards Tim? I think it's a separate question.
No, he's not loving towards anybody. He's not even loving towards himself. Like
Right.
he's very selfish. He's not thinking about everybody else. He does. That's what I'm saying. I think and that might be something that they kind of like are trying to portray. He is full of love. I think if he had learned how to love truly, he wouldn't be doing this to his wife and he wouldn't be doing this to Tim, you know, but he doesn't know how, and he's not allowed himself to learn it. So
So he
eh,
loves, but he's not loving.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's what I feel.
I'll accept that compromise. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I fully am in the camp of he loves.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm not so certain of myself that I'd be like he doesn't love them, and it's a fake story, so it doesn't
Yeah,
really
it's a fake
matter.
story. It's true.
Like it's like not like we're right or wrong, but like
Right? Yeah.
I can see that. Like
Hmm.
I'm not gonna argue against that. It
Yeah.
is yeah. It makes him to me very unlikable.
Yeah.
And so and that's also why I kind of was mentioning the happy ending piece to thinking about it because given that he's so unlikable,
Hmm.
I'm not sure him having any ending would make me feel good,
Yeah.
right? Because if it ends tragically for him, I'm
Hmm.
not feeling good about that, even though I don't like
No.
him.
Right. Yeah.
If
Yeah.
he's got some kind of fairy tale ending, I don't like him,
Right. Yeah.
right? So you didn't like you don't deserve it. It's like well, no matter what happens, I'm not gonna feel good about it in that way. Which
Hmm.
whatever.
Yeah.
Now something that was interesting, which and maybe you're different from me. I'm a
Mm.
super nosy person, right?
Okay.
I tend to like. I remember being younger. If I happened to be in my dad's office, I might look around at things.
Hmm.
I'm not snooping like his daughter did, but like I
Hmm.
might kind of casually look around. Do you think it's interesting how yes, there's things you didn't know about your father, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
But does that warrant you like rifling through his stuff to figure out what it is?
I think in her situation, I think in her situation, her mom basically invited her to do that. You know,
Did she?
I mean, she said if you had questions, you need to talk to him, right?
Right. Not go through his stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, like,
Like, oh, talk to him. Cool. Let me go rifle through his and open up his locked drawer. Right. Like because
yeah,
again, I think about my own life. Like, there's plenty of stuff I don't know about my father. Like, I'm
hmm
like, there's a lot of mystery there. But like, I don't feel like that means, oh, let me go through his stuff
hmm
and like try to figure it out. Like, let me
right,
check his diary. Let me read his like. I'm like,
hmm
he's not telling me. It means I don't know. Right. I can
right,
ask him or
hmm
I don't know. To me,
right,
I'm
yeah,
like, go like again, I might casually look around and see if I see something,
hmm
right? But I'm not sneaking through his thing. And again, she's early 20s, so there's some degree of young personness to what she was doing, right?
right, yeah,
But I'm like, I'm not rifling through my parents' things just because I want to know like more about them. You know what I
hmm
mean? Like, I don't know. It just seems like what are you doing, chick?
She
Like,
also feels really close to her father, so I think that's one of the things that might trigger that. She's like, not only is she not going, not only is she does she feel like maybe she has the right to do it, but if she got caught, he wouldn't care. You know, like I feel like that's how close they are together. You saw how they acted in the other episode, you know, like they were like inseparable. And then the mom just stated, she was like, you know, you
yeah,
all were so close. So I think she just, and besides that, her mom did the same thing. So like it runs in the family in any case. Like,
that's to me a little bit different.
I
Right,
mean,
like spouse, right, is different to me, like, because we're supposed to be open. Now I'm still not gonna go through your stuff
hmm
unless there's something I feel like is like dangerous or like, wait a minute, like,
hmm
but like your parents, I'm like,
mm,
they don't owe you, like, you know what I mean, like it doesn't owe you like this level of open. I don't know, maybe as a parent I'm like, why are you going through my stuff? Right,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
be upset that I didn't tell you and talk to me about that, but like,
yeah, yeah. Also, yeah, I'm not that. Sorry. Good grief. I don't know what that was.
we good?
Yeah,
Like,
barely, but yeah.
help, like, I can't, I'm over here.
No, what was I gonna say? I am a very, I don't know where this came from either, but I'm very much the type of I don't have an issue with privacy, right? So like if someone decided to rifle, like if Liam just decided to rifle through my stuff, like he has the code to my phone. Like he can open my phone up. He can take it whenever he wants to. I don't, you know, I don't care just because I don't care, sort of thing. So, and also on the flip side, I don't go through other people's stuff. I have no, I have no, I don't know. Like I'm just not that curious. I guess. Like I'm just like, if they want me to know whatever. But I guess the side of me that doesn't care about privacy, quote unquote. For the most part, I think there are probably some situations where I'd be upset, but not at the fact that they're going through it, but at the fact that what are you doing, sort of thing. Like, is this not something that you can actually, like, and I think maybe that situation would more be like, um, I don't know. I don't know. I can't think of a situation off the top of my head where I'd just be like outraged that someone was going through my stuff. You know, I guess if they were going through my wallet, I would have an issue, but only because I'm like, are you trying to steal money from me? Like, are you trying to steal
Right.
like my cards or cash? But if you just like, someone was just like, if I had no money in my wallet, and someone was like, hey Nate, let me see your wallet, I'd probably just like, yeah, sort of thing. Even though it's probably not a good idea, because taking pictures of stuff they shouldn't be taking pictures.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess as I'm thinking about it, there's a space where yes, Hawk just went missing, right?
yeah.
And
Hmm.
so if they had portrayed it like, hey, this daughter is worried, like I'm trying to figure out where my father is and if he's okay. So
Right. Yeah.
you've been missing for I don't know weeks, months.
Hmm.
So I'm going through your stuff because I'm trying to figure out where you are and make sure
Hmm.
you're okay.
Yeah.
That to me, like that's what snooping is for.
Right.
right? Like, you know what I mean?
Okay.
Like snooping like that. Like
Yeah.
I'm opening a locked drawer. I'm doing stuff because I'm like, look, I don't know if you're okay,
Mhm.
and now I'm concerned. So
Right.
let me figure out. Not, I feel like you've been hiding something from me
Right.
and not totally honest. So
Mhm.
let me figure out what it is.
Yeah.
That none of your business. But like, hey, look, like, are you okay? Like, I gotta find you. So
Yeah.
be
I
upset
feel
if you
you.
want to, but I'm trying to figure out if you're okay and where you are.
Right.
I got it, right? Like,
Okay.
um, speaking of privacy, I remember just a quick side story. I was dating someone a while back,
Mhm.
and we were friends first, and then dating on and off. So we were on an off stage, but
Okay.
still somewhat communicating. But
Yeah.
the way I tend to be sometimes, if I'm not dating the person, sometimes I just go dark, just to prove to myself that we're not dating, right? Like,
What do you
I'm
mean
not
dark?
required to talk to you,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Okay.
Like, so when we're dating, there's some, not required, but like, communication. If we're
Mhm.
not dating, if I don't talk to you for a week, that's my business,
Oh,
right?
yeah, I
Like,
agree.
I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
owe you like
Mhm.
talking to you. So I
Right,
was in this
yeah.
phase where I was just like wasn't responding to email.
Mhm.
So she had my email password because we were
Mhm.
dating. What I didn't care. So
Mhm.
she figured he's not responding to email. I'm going to check the email to make sure he got it and see what he's doing.
Okay.
So she found email between me and some other people and stuff I sent to them and got
Mhm.
upset and yada 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 and
Okay.
called me all kinds of. It was just a big mess. And I'm like, first of all, you shouldn't even have been in here at all.
Right, okay.
So, but yeah, it was just a whole. And I was like,
Oh, man, that's a mess.
it was such a mess. And I was
Yeah.
like, first of all, we're not dating. What are you doing in my email? Why are you what?
Mhm.
Okay, whatever. So that really ended that. Anyway, just so I'm like,
Yeah. I feel
privacy.
you.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, in that
Right.
case, like, in that situation, I don't think I wouldn't be upset. I'd be upset with her because not because she went through my stuff, but because we're no longer dating. So what's your
Yeah.
issue?
Right.
Sort
Well,
of
you going through
thing.
something
Yeah.
what you met like what are you doing?
Yeah.
And this
Yeah.
stuff happens when we weren't dating. So
Yeah.
again,
Also.
if you didn't want to know, you shouldn't have been snooping through my stuff, right? Like
Right.
you don't get to be
Well,
mad at me about
yeah, that's also a double-edged
that.
sword, bro. What are you
Right.
doing? Like,
Hey, like, yeah. Anyway, that was
anyways.
an interesting time. But yeah, so now I had another question, just thinking through, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
because Frankie gets very upset with Marcus, right,
Mm-hmm.
for not kind of being out there fighting, right? Marcus was even kind of trying to pull that student back and trying
Mm-hmm.
to keep him safe, which we
Mm-hmm.
saw, was a dangerous situation,
It
right?
was, yeah.
And I always see this struggle between people that want to fight and people that want to remain safe. We even think
Yes.
about, even looking back, like slavery, right? People can look back and be like, why didn't y'all just all rise up and just,
Mm-hmm.
murder them, take over and leave, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why didn't everyone just run away? You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Because some people did and were free,
Yes.
and
Mm-hmm.
some people talked back and didn't, like, and
Mm-hmm.
some people were like, it's good enough,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not worth my life to try to be free,
Yeah.
and I try to have space for both people, right? Like, we need some people, in order for it to have progress, some people need to raise up and do and push,
Right. Mm-hmm.
right? But I'm not upset with people that also are not there,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, I'm not the one to be like, yeah, let me go rat on the people that ran away. That I think is
Okay.
too much, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
be like, hey, massa, like, they ran away, go get them. Like, that's not necessary. But like, the
Right.
fact that you are like, I'm not gonna run, like, I'm staying here, like, I'm good, y'all go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not mad at you about that. So I like when I think about the Frankie Marcus thing, right? Like, Marcus is not the type to be a fighter in this way, right? That's just not him. He's on the side of, hey, look, like, I'm trying to get by, I'm trying to be safe, I'm trying to be out here marching the streets and get my behind whooped by billy clubs, right?
Yeah.
He wasn't trying to say, Frankie, don't do it. He's like, I'm just not doing it.
Well,
How
he
do you
was
feel?
trying to say, Frankie, don't do it. He tried to stop him. And then he's like, let me take you home.
Yeah, but true. Which, yeah, I don't know. How do you feel about, I guess, that tension, that balance between, like, hey, like, fighters versus people that are, not fighting per se. Should everybody be a fighter?
Yes.
If you're not a fighter, you're a sucker.
I think everyone should be a fighter. Everyone is meant to be a fighter. The question is, oh, do you have the courage to do it, and for what? And what are you fighting for? That's really my thing. I think a lot of people take their they're like, oh, I'm just trying to survive, which I think is not the. But this is a very personal thing because I don't think humans were meant to just survive, right? So if so for Marcus's situation, I'm very frustrated with him. Now I can't be judgmental towards him because like everyone also has that fight within them. He, again, this is the same thing as Harvey, like, or sorry, Harvey, Howard. Um, Howard. God dang it. Hawk.
Got it.
Is that, I went through three names there. Hawk. This is the same thing with Hawk. Like he's coming from a situation that I haven't come from, right? So I don't know the the internal fight that he's having to go through. So Marcus is like he was just trying to make his dad proud, right? And now he's in this unfortunately state of self-preservation rather than living. And the problem is that does spill over to the people who are around you, and it does negatively affect them because you're not willing, you haven't learned to be willing to stand up for what is needed, but you are willing to profit from the fight that those people who had the courage to stand up and fight did. And so, and I'm not saying you shouldn't have that right, but I'm saying that everyone should be a fighter. You should be fighting for what is correct.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was thinking of an analogy, and the more I'm thinking about it, the more I view it almost like the military, right? Like
Hmm.
we need people to be in the military, right?
Yeah. Okay.
The fact that I don't volunteer, I don't think makes me a coward per se.
Yeah, but I think the military is different. Go ahead. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'm
Go
saying
ahead.
because right, like now, if it came down to, hey, like we got no more people, we need somebody, right?
Hmm.
I think now I got to figure out, do I step up or not, right?
Right. Hmm.
But the fact that, hey, as long as someone is fighting, my skill set might be something else, right? My skill
Hmm.
set might not necessarily be courage in that way, given, I guess, where the balance is, right? At a point, it gets to, you come to my house, it's a little bit different, right?
Hmm.
Which is when you saw even Marcus, right? Like he wasn't out there trying to do whatever,
Hmm.
but when the police came in that bar and
Hmm.
the boy was threatened, like he
Hmm.
wasn't about to be like, just run. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, so he's not like, yo, I'm out here doing whatever, but comes down to it, I'm not gonna just leave you here. Like I'm gonna protect you with my body, right? So I was wondering, like, if there's space for, hey, look, like not everybody has the same temperament, mentality to be like, I'll be the first one on the front line. Like I'll be the first person to sit in the front of the bus
Hmm.
and get spit on or whatever to
Hmm.
endure that, right? Like some
Right.
people are, some
Hmm.
people are not.
Right.
And I don't know that I feel like judging people that like aren't trying to be first one
Okay.
to go
Yeah.
through the door.
So
I don't know.
well, and that's why there's a difference, right? So you were using the army analogy. The army currently in its current state is a career choice, right? So yeah, we do need, or they say they do need. They have a huge freaking budget, but that's a topic for another day. We need people to enroll in the army. Currently, it's people who enroll in the army is more of um, you know, a career choice, a personal like pool and stuff like that. Like this is something that they feel for themselves that's needed, right? That's not the question. The question is really, if there was a situation, would you step up, right? And so now the difference here is, like, if there's a situation, if there was an attack maybe on the U.S. or something like that, and you had invaders and stuff like that, like would you step up, right? So the difference here is so that's one difference, but the difference when in what you were saying, like not everybody needs to be front line. So you have, if you want to take the army analogy, you have the foot soldiers, you have the paratroopers, whatever. You also have the medics, you have the people working behind the scenes and stuff like that. That doesn't mean that they're not fighting. It just means that they're fighting in a different capacity, right? Marcus, in what I was understanding, was trying to run away from it, or he was having a hard time accepting it until it came to his doorstep. And then he made that decision because he was not going to sit there and allow that boy to get beat. And so he fought back, right? If that hadn't happened, he would have just ran, right? Because in my opinion, if the situation hadn't come to him, he wouldn't have stood up, right? So, and I think the problem is it's not that he's not a fighter. We clearly know that he is a fighter from what he was trying to do for the black community. The problem is that didn't transfer over to the LGBTQ plus community. Like he was just having a hard time assuming that, right? Had he had an easier time assuming that, I think he would have been right by Frankie, and he may have even just been, no, he probably wouldn't have been leading it because he doesn't seem that type of person. He seems like somebody who's trying to make change, you know, kind of uh, from with the pen and paper, because that can happen as well. Like if you can enact change, like change comes from multiple different ways, right? And then
Hmm.
hopefully it regroups to make one big change or whatever. So that's definitely the situation. So excuse me, I don't, hopefully I didn't sound like, I might have, but hopefully I didn't sound like I was calling Marcus a coward. But I think that if you don't fight, like for for example, you were talking about the slaves, and some slaves just saying like, so, sorry, you were just saying that some slaves were, just staying there or whatever. Like, I'm good with the situation. That is a problem. You know, that is a problem if you are. I feel like that's a problem if you see what's happening around you and you're just like, not my problem because I'm good in Master's house, sort of thing. I feel like that's a problem. But like if you see the problem, but you're like, I'm not a front man, right? Um, but for example, they had the Underground Railroad, and you knew some information. You're like, yo, I'm not gonna go fight this, but I got some information that might help you, sort of thing. There's all different types of ways. I think that is the case because at the end of the day, yeah, once you're free, you owe that your freedom to the people who actually stood up and did something, you know, whether they were front men or not.
Yeah.
End of spiel.
Yeah, it's I just always think about those situations like what would I do? Um, because it's like, is it there's always calculus, right? Like if you have a family, if you have thing like, is it worth my life to try to escape, right? Or to try to do this thing, right? Is it worth my family seeing me hung up in a tree,
Hmm.
right, in order to be free, right? And I think it's very personal, and it's like, it's hard, right? Because we're still human, we still have fears, right? And so
Yeah.
there's, yes, the situation is terrible,
Hmm.
but is it as terrible as dying, right?
But I mean, like, is dying that terrible? Like, for example, like I feel like the self-preservation. Excuse me. If you're just worried about your self-preservation and the self-preservation of your kids or your family in a very toxic environment, I'm not convinced that that is a good response. It might not be that's something also that you have to consider. It might not be the time to fight, right? So like you might be like, something needs to happen, but now isn't the time. I've seen that happen, and I've had to make that choice for myself. Be like, basically pick your battles, right? This battle not worth it. There's a battle coming where I might need to stand or something like that. That's a case. But like, if you are very concerned only about self preservation, it is a very, I think it's kind of a selfish thought process, because you're just worried about yourself. You're not worried, and you're maybe your family, and you'll be like, and there are people that be like, they wouldn't stand for, they wouldn't stand up for me and my family. I'm not going to stand up for them, which is, I mean, depending on what you're talking about, but if they're talking about this, like the LGBTQ or like the black, like the civil rights movement, no, they're standing up for literally everybody, everyone who falls under this flag, and even those who don't, they're standing up for them. So you cannot sit there and be like, oh, but self-preservation. No, no, no.
Yeah.
I don't.
I mean,
think
I think it's a very difficult and uncommon thing to actually truly like value others more than like yourself or your like personal community, right?
Yeah.
Like to truly be selfless, right? Like, hey, look, I know I'm putting myself, my family at risk, but it could help everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's valuable. I think that's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think that's the best of us.
Right.
That everyone isn't there,
Mm-hmm.
I don't really blame people for. Right. Like I'm not expecting that level of self-sacrificing,
Mm-hmm.
I think is the goal.
Mm-hmm.
But I also don't hold everyone to that high of a standard, personally.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not expecting people to be altruistic, and I'm also not expecting people to everyone to be at that level. Like I said, Marcus, until it came to his doorstep, he wasn't there, right? And so it's very impossible to judge when and where a person should be, and whatever. People do tend to try to do that. Be like, oh, you should have been there. No,
Right.
No, because maybe it wasn't time for them to be there. That is not what you're judging. What you're judging, what you're determining is when it came time for you to stand up and fight or whatever. If your excuse was self-preservation in any of its forms, that is not okay, because that is a very selfish situation. I'm not expecting you to be like, kamikaze or anything like that, because it will come to your doorstep, and the question is, what are you going to do when it does?
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah. I
That's
think
how it is.
in case of Marcus, right? Like when they came into that bar, had he ran and left the boy,
Like he did before, yes.
like that's when I'd be like, problem. Even if he stayed but didn't choose to necessarily put his body in front of the boy, right?
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
you were still there.
Mhm.
I'm okay with that, right? Because not everybody's willing to put their body
Yeah,
in
that's
front of someone.
okay.
Like, you know,
Yeah.
but the fact that you didn't leave him there by himself,
Right.
I think meets the level, right?
Yeah, because
Now,
you can
there's
say a
levels
lot
beyond
just
that.
by your presence.
Yeah, like,
yes, I
But
agree.
some people I think would be like, you didn't fight for him and fight the police and you just let them, like, I don't know. I don't know. Everybody's there, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
But the fact that you didn't leave him there by himself,
Mhm.
I think in that situation, I think you met the standard, right? And I guess that's how I'm viewing in totality, right? Like what is the example of that on the larger societal scale, right?
Mhm.
Of the, hey, I didn't run away and leave you, but
Mhm.
also I'm not putting my body in front of this baton for you, right?
Mhm.
What does that look like?
Yeah, but see, and that's the thing, and this is why it's really very difficult to judge outside of very clear-cut situations, and you probably really shouldn't be judging anyway, because what a person doesn't do, like if they're not doing it with their body. So, like for example, I'm not a fighter. Like I'm not built like Frankie. Okay, so me doing that
Right.
would probably, defeat the purpose, to be honest. Like they've got more cannon fodder, like so it would be probably useful. I'm much more of a thinker and a writer, right? So it would probably be more useful for me to be like, hey, take me to jail, or I'm not going to, I'm not going to fight back, but I guarantee you, you will see me fight. And maybe and in the way that I do it, hopefully I will be the most effective. So like Marcus did run off when the first time we saw
Right.
them do the raid, and he ran off, and I was very disappointed in
Yeah,
him.
same.
Like, again, not expecting him to go and fight the cops, but try to make a corridor of escape for Frankie and the singer. I forgot what her name was, or his
Hmm.
name was. I don't. I can't
Yeah, I forgot.
remember. Yeah, but try to make a corridor of escape. Make the diversion. He just ran off, right? And I think that's the arc that they've been trying to show Marcus. Like, he's struggling with it. Like, he's not comfortable with his sexuality, it seems, especially not in the open, right? He's already struggling with it being black. That is that is a double whammy. Living in a racist country and a homophobic country. Like,
Hmm.
if you find yourself in both of those positions, like, come on now. And now also, okay, if you find yourself in both of those positions and you're a female, like, listen, you just got you just got the world against you, basically,
Yeah.
sort of thing. So like, it's just he failed the first time, in my opinion, but looks like he he was working on himself, and quite often, like I said, it's the situations that you know that
Yeah,
make you kind of have to confront who you are. So
for
yeah.
sure. And a lot of that was me just kind of arguing with myself, or just like analyzing myself, and my response to Marcus, right?
Right.
In situations like that, when you watch movies
Hmm.
and things, and like, how come they didn't do X, Y, and Z thing? I would have, like, no, you don't know
Hmm.
what you would have done, and you know
No,
what I mean.
you
Like,
don't. Yeah.
people like to judge people for not being like super heroic all the time, right? And I'm
Right.
like,
Yeah.
I think Frankie is sometimes a little bit too judgmental of Marcus, right? In some
Because
ways,
people will be.
yeah, you know
Yes.
what I mean. So,
Hmm.
and I guess that's what I was feeling. I'm like, look, like, I get it, right?
Hmm.
Like, he's not fully accepting, he's not doing everything he could do,
Hmm.
but also understand he isn't the one to do all that you're doing either,
Right.
right? And
Yes.
so
He has
there's
a
got to be some
spot.
understanding of like who you are, who he is, and like kind of how you guys fit, and like, if y'all can
Yeah.
come to understand each other, that's cool, right? And maybe Marcus eventually gets to a different place, right?
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
to judge him for that feels unfair in degrees. So
Yeah, I mean, because again, Marcus didn't do what he should have did, in my opinion, the first thing. But again, I don't think he was. What I was thinking when you were asking those questions is like, maybe you were thinking about, yeah, yourself, and like what you would do. Because I know you don't like, you're very confrontational adverse, even more so,
absolutely. Right. Yeah.
even,
Right.
even more
Yeah.
so than I am. But I also know that when the situation comes down to it, you have made a stand multiple times. So like, I'm not sure if that's what you were thinking, but I don't think that that is something that people do that in their lives, where they're like, oh man, I wish I could have maybe stood up and something like that. But like I said, that might not be your situation. When it comes down to it, though, it's quite likely, it's like when they say, I don't know what they call it. Like, oh, what's the saying? Like when you corner a lion or something like that. You don't know that this person is ferocious until you put them into the wrong situation or the right
Hmm.
situation, depending.
Right.
And then you wish you hadn't, sort of thing,
Right.
And
Yeah.
in those cases, it's often better to deal with the people like Frankie, because you know what you're getting. You deal with people who don't say nothing, don't say nothing, don't say nothing until you push them too far. Then your whole world's crumbling down around you,
Right.
because you're just like, oh, they don't say anything, so I can take advantage. No, that's not the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Sort of
Absolutely.
thing. So you should have learned your lesson from dealing with dealing with people like Frankie, where at least they're out there telling you something, so you'd be like, okay. And again, that just shows the large spectrum on which people find themselves. But to not do anything, I think, is a problem, because you you're going to end up benefiting from the lives of the people lost that did do something, even if they were on the front line, because especially like during the riots and stuff like that, there were also like the like Stonewall riots and stuff like that. There were people who lost their who were like also suffering from HIV and stuff like that. There were other people who weren't in the riots but who were in the hospitals, helping them and comforting them and stuff like that. So like, I don't know. It shows the large spectrum of people. I just think doing nothing at all and being afraid to do something is the issue, So
Yeah. Well, on that note, what's your rating, Nate, for this episode, the penultimate episode of season 1?
Man, I was thinking of this, and I wanted to give it a 7, or like an 8. Not that it was poorly done. Probably a 7. I'll probably stay with a 7. Not that it was poorly done. There were some crying scenes that I wasn't convinced about. that weren't convincing. But also it's just a sad, show. So it's just like not a show. Episode, and it's just not an episode for me. So some of the I don't know. It was just a very heavy episode, and there were there weren't any light pieces, so
Yeah.
whatever. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I'm probably around a 7 as well. Like I find that the whole Fire Island piece for me just was depressing.
Yeah.
Like even more so than what was happening with Frankie and Marcus and all of that. Like it was just it was just such a toxic thing, right? So like I guess I in some ways don't mind sad, but toxic really just is not enjoyable to me, right? Like I'm just like, this is just not that sadness is enjoyable, right? But like I feel something different when I'm like, oh, this is tragic versus like this is just icky, right? Like all of it was
Take
just
me out.
I was like, all of it, I was just like, this is just not, I don't like any of this.
Yeah, and it's funny too, because those scenes on Fire Island is what a lot of gay people say they don't like about the gay community. When there's they're always like, oh, it's just about sex, drugs, and all this other stuff, which is not the case. Sometimes it's like that, but it's not always the case. So you can't generalize. But yeah, I understand.
Right, and it wasn't even just that stuff. It was that stuff in combination with
the fact he wasn't
like Tim, right, and the fact that he wasn't okay. Like all of that, I was like, this is just
tragic.
Ugh.
Yeah,
I'm like, ugh.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I understand.
So that's how I felt about that. I mean, do you? I know we asked this before, but do you think? Different question. Would you want a season 2?
Yeah, I would. I would love a season 2. I would. I don't know what they would talk about, right? Because this is very specific. I don't know if I would like to watch another one going through the exact same era, sort of thing. But if they came up with some other premise that kind of followed the same, hopefully maybe a happier ending, like, the LGBTQ plus community does have some happy, stories. So like if maybe they come up with something like that, like it would be great. I would. You don't think you would? Well, it's not your genre anyway.
Right, but I guess my thought would be like, why? Like why have a season 2 of this versus just something else, right? Because like this story to me looks like it's going to be done, right? So it won't be Hawk and Tim, right? Like we know. I hope they wouldn't somehow let's go back and look at these 2 years when they were like, I don't really,
Yeah, I think that would
I'm
be
done, right? That's
exaggerated.
no,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So if it's not them, to me, just in my thought process is like, why not just let this be essentially a limited series, right? So
Hmm.
we had 8 episodes, self-contained thing, story,
Yeah.
done, good. If we do something else, does it need to be Fellow Travelers season 2, right? Or could it just not just be some other thing about some other story? I
S-
guess that's where my mind
Yeah.
goes.
So I wouldn't necessarily think that it would have to be. What I was thinking in my head is Fellow Travelers. It could keep the name Fellow Travelers because the name Fellow Travelers means something that's broader than this just story, right? Um, so it could keep the name, but it doesn't necessarily have to keep the name, but still be in the same type of historical drama, you know, the same type of storytelling, the same type of whatever, but just a different story. So yeah, it wouldn't be Hawk and and Tim, it'd be something else, but the same type of storytelling, the same type of focus on the LGBTQ plus community, the same type of like uh, it doesn't even have to be that, like, criminalization or maybe support or something like that. It could be anything. So it could have just what I'm thinking is like an anthology of different stories that kind of center around the same kind of like. Have you ever seen Queer as Folk?
Mm-mm.
So, something similar to that, where there's just a bunch of different stories around the gay community or the LGBTQ plus community. Sorry, because it's
Gotcha.
a lot about.
Yeah.
They tried to restart that too,
Yeah.
but
Would you still would it be too similar to still have this same like multiple timeline thing going on? Like would that work for you again?
I mean, I guess it would. I just don't like jumping forward and going backwards. I don't, because I always have so many questions. So like it's hard for me to do it. But it's not that I wouldn't watch it. I definitely watch it, but it's just what do you think? I
Yeah,
mean, about the timelines, I mean.
yeah, like I don't mind it in this show, and I don't mind it in many respects. To
Yeah.
me, I wonder, say they did a season 2 and it was a different couple,
Yeah.
but they still did like a similar time thing.
Mhm.
To me, it would feel too much the same.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? I'm like, didn't we just do this?
Mhm.
Like and that's what I'm trying to figure out what would a season 2 be? What kind of story could it be without it just being this story with like different names in a different time period, right?
No.
Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
No.
Like, how do we make it something worth watching another 8 episodes of, and not just a repeat of the story? Given it's not going to be like furthering this story, right?
Yeah.
We got to start from scratch again. So are they going to make the mistake of just reskinning this with
Mhm.
like, oh, now it's Bim and talk. It's like, wait a minute, this is the same story. Like,
Yeah, no, I mean, you would just have to be creative. So it was written by, you just have to do the same type of story telling. You don't have to necessarily jump back and forth. That's not what creates the story, right? Basically, they're just trying to traverse multiple years, which you can still make another story where they're traversing multiple like decades and stuff like that. That's not a problem. But you don't necessarily have to go back and forth like they're doing in this show. Like, you can make it linear if you want to, or you can make it go backwards, like completely backwards or something like that, or you can start from the middle and then go to the end and come in like that. There's multiple ways that you can do it. Or what would be really cool, which might be out the scope of this, is um, tell like one story or like one episode for each person, or maybe one season for each person, kind of like what they're doing with Bridgerton, but bring them all together. Like, there's movies that do that, where you have they'll focus on one character and then another and another, and then slowly kind of intertwine them, and so you get to
Yeah.
see. That would be cool. They're like, there's just many different
Yeah.
ways. What I'm just
Yeah.
saying is like follow the same type of like storytelling and stuff. Yeah.
It reminds me of, because my wife reads like some of these like romance novels, and a lot of the
Yeah.
ones she reads, like if it's by the same author,
Mm-hmm.
like it'll be a couple, and then they'll have like a brother, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the next book will be the brother,
Yeah.
and then in that book they're introduced some person,
Yeah.
and then the next book is with that person. So
Yeah.
so it's loosely tied,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it's like, okay, you meet this person, next book is about that person, and then this other next book is about someone you met the last one, you know? So
Yeah.
they're loosely connected, but it's not like it's not one story or anything. It's just you might see this person walk in because you knew them
Yeah.
from before, right? So, you know,
I mean, that's a great idea.
yeah, and then those things, but also those are very much, in a lot of ways, it's the same story over and over and over again, right?
Right,
Like Hallmark movies, right? Like
Mhm.
I don't expect it to be new and different, right?
Mhm.
Like I'm watching it because it is the same, you know.
Right, yeah.
So that's why I'm wondering, like, but again, that's like one movie, a couple
Mhm.
hours. So I'm wondering,
Yeah.
you know, would Fellow Travelers be that? And maybe that's okay for some people, right? Like, hey,
Mhm.
I watched season 2 and it feels just like season 1, and that's
Mhm.
what I want. Like, I
Yeah.
want to watch this thing, right? I
Mhm.
know it ends up, now this isn't really the same way because those Hallmark things all kind of always end up happy, right? And so that's
Yeah.
why you can keep watching them, multiple of them,
Mhm.
because it's always happy. If they were
Yeah.
always sad,
Mhm.
I don't think you'd watch so many of them.
Yeah.
Right? It'd be
But
like,
if you did like a you know, a switch back and forth, like if they did another season with Cohen, that would be really interesting. And then also maybe like McCarthy, that would be interesting. Or like the secretaries. I mean, they introduced quite a few characters into this show. Like
Right.
I'd like to know what happened to
Yep.
her brother first, you know, for example,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So that would
Yeah.
be interesting. Still
Yeah.
be during the same era as well, you know.
Yes, yeah, they could branch off and do, like, even this boy that they introduced, right? Like he could be the main character of
Yeah.
the next thing, right? And then
Precisely,
maybe you meet somebody else, and then they're the one for, you know. They could
Mhm.
always kind of keep
Yeah.
doing that. So yeah, it could be interesting. But yeah, I don't know.
I
We'll
don't think
see.
they will though. I think
Yeah.
because this was just one book or one story. I think they're just gonna leave it at that. So
Yeah, which I think is fine.
It's
right?
fine
I,
as
I
well.
think it's
Yeah.
okay to have one season self-contained, start
Yep.
to end.
hmm
I'm okay with it. you
I
know?
am okay with it as
I'm
well.
okay with that. We don't gotta everything's gonna be multiple seasons,
Yeah,
especially if the story is like has like an ending. So
Yeah.
you know, I'm okay
Yep.
with it.
I agree.
Well, folks, what do you guys think? Do you want season 2? What does season 2 look like? How you feel about Marcus? Do you think he's a punk, or are you okay with him? Do you like Hawk? If
Do you like Hawk?
If
That's
you
a
like
good
Hawk,
question.
let us know.
You said
mean,
that with a disgusted look on your
I may
face.
argue with you in the comments. I'll try not to. I'll respect your opinion about Hawk, even though
Oh
I think
man.
he's boo boo. But it's okay.
Man.
We can have our opinions.
Yeah.
What? As always, don't forget to like, subscribe, click notification bell, and if you really enjoyed it, leave a comment and share with a friend.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else, Nate, sir?
That is all.
All right.
That is all.
See you next time.
Ciao.